As most of you all know, Alton Towers reopens next week. So given this, we wanted to tell you our top tips and tricks for enjoying the resort and spa. So, when you book the tickets, you may want to book the fast track parking, but don't bother because if you get there early enough, you can just walk. You may want to if you have to come from further afield, but for most people this won't be an issue. Now, you also don't want to get the monorail, as the queue for this is a lot longer than just not being lazy and walking to the park yourself.
Now, of course, if you have children, probably the monorail is the best choice, but
yeah.
Obviously if you're sort of over the age of 10, you should be fine walking the 15 minutes to get to the park, and it saves a significant amount of time. Traditionally, I'd always recommend going to Nemesis and Galactica first, but Nemesis is out for the season, rest in peace. So for this season especially, I'd suggest probably going to Dark Forest. It's got 2 rides, so same as all the other areas in the park, and it's one of the furthest afield from the entrance. Whereas stuff like Wickerman and Smiler always get a large queue at the start. You want to go with the area with the most rides that'll get the shortest queue. So I think Dark Forest is probably the best choice for early on in the day rather than the traditional Forbidden Valley.
However, if you are a big fan of Galactica, we would recommend getting there quite early, as you may be able to get a few re-rides depending on what day you go. Also, the Wickerman may be a decent shout if you are at the park early, as you may be able to get only a 20 or 30 minute queue for it, which we were able to do. And this does result in a very quick ride compared to what you're looking at for the majority of the day.
Yeah, 100%. My suggestion always is walk down to sort of the Wickerman Plaza, and then there's the path. You can either go over the bridge to Dark Forest, or you can take the path through Gloomy Wood and sort of that area to Forbidden Valley. So depending on whether you want to do Galactica or whether you want to do Rita and 13 with short queues first, you can make that decision at that point based on what your party prefers. Another tip we have for riding the roller coasters at Alton Towers is regarding where you sit on each train, because depending on how sort of experienced you are at riding roller coasters, say it's your first time riding some of the bigger rides, never go to the back if you have the choice. The back of the roller coaster is always more intense, and so if you're scared of loops, you're scared of big drops, anything like that, always go to the front of the train. It'll be less intense and a bit less forceful, which is sort of what you're looking for as a beginner. You don't want to be experiencing high G's.
Also, this will mean that us true enthusiasts with high G-force tolerance can accept the burden and get a much better ride than you lot.
But also, it's sort of understandable that some children sort of psychologically don't want to go to the front of the train. I don't know, but some children associate the front with sort of being scary. So my suggestion is, if that is the case, maybe go for the second and third row if you have that option. But if you're just the average person, you don't have the fear of going to the front, always go to the front. As a whole, if you're not looking for an intense ride, the front will always be the best. You've got a clear view and it's the least intense.
It does change depending on what ride you go on. So for example, Wickerman, you're not going to get much airtime if you're not row 10 or behind really. Some rows are cornered off for ride access pass users. But really it's about going and finding out what you enjoy so you can request a row, decide what you want to do with your day and how you can best enjoy it. So for me, for example, I do prefer Oblivion on the second row. I think you do get a bit more whip over the drop, to be honest. It's a controversial viewpoint, you don't get as good of a view, but for me I prefer back row on that. I think Wickerman front row can be a great experience, a lot better than any of the middle rows, so that's also one to consider. Nemesis front row is incredible, you get the great visuals, you think your feet are going to crack against the rocks. And Smiler front row, it's sort of essential if you don't want to have neck pain, but yeah, just avoid the right side of the car and you should be fine.
Yeah, with a Smiler as well, it is absolutely crucial if you get a back row, even on the front, if you have any sort of back or neck problems, always take middle seats. The middle seats of the train, so if there's 4 in a row, always take the 2 in the middle. because they are the least intense and you're not over the wheelbase, which means you're not getting as much whip across the track. So yeah, if you have neck problems on any ride with four seats in a train, always go in the central ones. So in conclusion, if you want the best view, go to the front. If you want a less intense ride experience, go to the front. If you have neck and back problems, go to the middle seats. If you want a more intense ride experience on some of the milder rides, go to the back of the train.
Yes, now another bit of advice is how to avoid queuing a long time for rides. So, for example, Smiler has a single rider queue system, and this is great if you don't mind being separated from your party, although you will end up sitting on an edge seat, so bear that in mind. But last season we were able to half our wait on numerous occasions. I mean, it was a walk-on for the Smiler when it was on a 70-minute queue, so it's always good to check. Usually if you're at the stairs on the single rider queue, if you know where that is, it will be less than an hour wait. So it really is something good to consider if you want to maximise the rides that you can get.
Yeah, based on our calculations, the bottom of the stairs is about an hour wait. So if the main queue is, say, over an hour and a half, it's always good to consider that. But 9 out of 10 times when you do go there, you'll actually find that the queue is sort of halfway up the stairs, maybe even at the top of the stairs. So it's always worth having a quick check, especially if you're sort of by yourself or you have a small party and you're not too bothered about being by yourself. But obviously if you have sort of new riders and you want to share the experience with them, it might be better just to do the whole queue.
Now, another piece of advice, which is crucial, is avoid Spinball Whizzer at the start or end of the day. It's completely unreliable. I mean, if it's operating inconsistently, I wouldn't even recommend queuing for it, because you will end up queuing longer than the advertised wait because of how unreliable it is. So I would say avoid that unless it's on lower than a 40-minute queue and you've done a lot of the other rides at the park. Another good ride that you should do is Marauder's Mayhem. It's usually a walk-on or one cycle, and it's a really fun ride as long as you're not a fan of spinning.
Yeah, because sort of with Marauder's Mayhem, you've got sort of these like turntables in the centre of the ride. If all your party starts spinning them, and of course you like spinning, you're going to have a really fun ride experience. And for sometimes even a 2-minute queue, sometimes no queue, you get a really good ride. And we recommend this if you're ever walking past, maybe going from Wicker Man to the other areas of the park. It's always a good ride, especially if your party's willing to spin. Also, don't get us wrong, Sonic is an incredible ride. We both enjoy it, but sometimes it's not worth a long queue. But the good thing about it is it often has a really good throughput, so the queue isn't as long as it seems.
I'm not sure I'd describe Sonic as an incredible ride. It's not even called Sonic anymore. It's so bad Sonic didn't even want to renew the partnership. It's not a great ride. Another tip, though, is probably to avoid a lot of the Retro Squad attractions if you are focused on doing roller coasters. The queue will be longer than it seems. They load slowly. A lot of them have a long cycle. A good flat ride, which usually has a short queue, is the Blade. If you can get somewhere near the top, you will feel like you are about to die. Of course, it is fully safe, but it truly is an experience that you just need to have. It's incredible.
Yeah, so the Blade and Marauder's Mayhem, they are probably the best two flat rides in terms of throughput and actually getting on them quickly. Yeah, we don't really recommend doing the Retro Squad. First of all, they're not really that enjoyable. They are a bit painful. So our next tip in this video is when it's lunchtime, so about 12 o'clock, let's say, most people will go to one of the restaurants around the park and have some food. But our suggestion is actually go on the rides at these times, because the queues will be significantly shorter. So say something like Wicker Man or Smiler that's normally got really long queues, now is the best time to do it. And if you really do still want to eat during these times, a good way to sort of reduce how long a queue feels is to eat in the queue. And then for one, you're saving time sort of making a break and eating somewhere else, and you're still in the queue. So it's a win-win situation. and you're getting the best of the short queues at that time.
And our other tip is regarding the new attraction for the Alton Towers Resort, the Curse at Alton Manor. Now, this is a ride we're definitely going to do when we go to Alton Towers. However, if you do want to focus on roller coasters, we would completely recommend just avoiding this coming back later in the year when the hype has died down for it. Obviously, if you do want that experience, it's worth doing, but I would say don't go out of your way to do it. Just if you're crossing between like Wickerman and Katanga Canyon around there, that's a great time to do it. I mean, going back to what we said earlier, Congo River Rapids opens at about 11 o'clock each day based on last season. When Congo River Rapids opens is a great time to have a ride. It's a good fun ride and you're not going to waste too much time on it, which you will do in the later afternoon to early evening.
Yeah, always, if you want to do Congo, I always recommend trying to get there at 11. It's just opened. And if you're lucky, you will get sort of a 20-minute queue, even within the first hour of it opening. So it is a good idea to get that down there quite early on.
But if you don't like getting wet, it's not a great idea.
Back to the Curse at Alton Manor point, the queue for the ride will always be long. So it doesn't really matter when you get there, it's always going to be long. So if you do want to ride it, maybe one, check the app regularly, and two, don't sort of go out your way to go there because it's going to be a long queue no matter when. So, you know, just try and maximise your time around that and don't waste time as well. I think that's a crucial thing if you're not 100% bothered about riding it straight away.
With that ride, it really just depends what your personal priorities are. Obviously, as wider theme park enthusiasts, we will try and get on it, and that's a huge priority for us. But for those of you who are less experienced with the park, you may want to focus on the roller coasters more.
And I think if you're coming from sort of abroad as well and you just want to do, say, the Smiler because it's got the most loops or whatever sort of thing, just prioritise the rides. It's really not worth sort of queuing for this for a long period. It depends because we're not quite sure what the ride will be at this point. Obviously, we know it's sort of the re-theme of Jewel, but if it is sort of world class, which it has the potential to be, maybe it would be worth a ride. So I guess we've got to wait and see for that, but with that, it's best to make your decision on the day, and most importantly, don't waste time if you don't think it's worth it. Now, our last tip and point for this video is don't waste your time in queues for certain rides, especially the ones with a shorter duration like Rita and Oblivion. Now, because of sort of Rita's USP, it commonly does have quite a long queue in the park, even an hour plus, but it is 25 seconds long. Don't over prioritise Rita. It is a waste of time. If you really want to get a ride on Rita, do it at the beginning of the day when it has a 5-minute queue. Don't waste your time.
Just trust me with Rita, you're not missing much. And also 13 and Rita, as unreliable intermins, they both can have technological issues during the day, so it might be worth to bear that in mind. Say it's on like a 40-50 minute queue, that wait could very quickly become 70 or 80.
Yeah, 100%.
Also with Oblivion, really, it's not worth anything over 30 minutes, and I wouldn't personally recommend anything over 20 minutes for it.
Yeah, because the thing is with Oblivion, it has a really high throughput, so you can definitely get it at one point in the day to be under 20-minute queue. So just try and think about that and try and think when the best time to get to Oblivion would be, and don't waste your time in queues. And the other thing with Alton Towers, they tend to grossly underestimate, especially with Oblivion, the queue times. It's not such a big of a case with the other rides, but I find especially with Oblivion, when they say it's on a 40-minute queue, it tends to be an hour.
If you know what Alton Towers is, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe with notifications clicked for all of our incredible videos on this YouTube channel. We're going to make lots of vlogs, lots of videos. Just subscribe right now because I know where you live.
Guys, for Tom's threats, but please just like and subscribe. We really need it. Goodbye.